right, now joined by Jason Myles from the This is Revolution podcast.
Hello, hello.
You know, I have to admit, like, I don't have been super busy lately, so like I don't have that much of a chance to watch or listen to other things. But every time I see somebody posts on social media, like some little like clip from This is Revolution, it always looks like you're having a lot of fun. So
if I am a recruitment officer of the left, I can't get you to want to be part of this cadre unless we're having some sort of good time.
Fair enough.
So
yeah,
if I'm your intro drug, I need to be an entertaining one.
Yep. I promise we will, any viewers who are worried about this, we will almost certainly get to some, politics and class struggle and shit by the end of the episode. But before we started recording, you were saying something that was so interesting that I thought, we should really do this on air.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking, about grunge, and you were kind of giving me your take that there's no such thing.
No, yeah. As far as a musical genre, like when we think of musical genres, and I mentioned to Ben before, a doo-wop. I play metal, and if I say metal, there's a sound you hear. There's a certain distortion you hear, right? If we talk about the big four of thrash, Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, those guys all sound very, very similar. So I shouldn't say that. Not in a biting manner, but there's just a certain tonality that you want to get when you say, like, you play thrash metal. Like, we play fast and we play heavy and we distort our guitars like this. Like, there's an official sound because of friends I know that are techs for bands like Slayer and Exodus and Testament and Metallica, that there's a setup that they all have. And one day he was like, if you want to get the 80s thrash tone, this is what it is. Right. And it was very simple. And we kind of joked about it. But anyway, when I think of grunge, if you think of those 90s bands that are called grunge, let's just talk about the big four of grunge, right? Who would that be? Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and who else? Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam. Alice in Chains.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way in the world you can tell me Alice in Chains sounds like Nirvana. There's no way in the world you can tell me Mudhoney sounds like Tad, sounds like the Melvins. Those bands all sound very different. They just happen to be from Seattle. And what happens when an area is hot, everybody gets back then, everything's different now with the internet, but everybody got a deal. Like the Bay Area where I'm from, when Metallica moved out here, everybody got a deal, right? Same thing with Seattle in the early 90s. When Nirvana hit, and they weren't really the first ones, right? Soundgarden kind of had a little more success before that, but when Nirvana hit huge, everybody got a deal. Cats started moving to Seattle to try to get a deal.
Do you remember that guy? There was a New York Times story several years ago about this guy who
in the army that was on.
Yeah. He'd been kicked out of both Nirvana and Soundgarden in both cases before they made it big.
He paid for Nirvana's Bleach album. Yeah. He's on the press photos for Nirvana's Nevermind. If you look at the early press photos, there's 4 people, not 3.
Yeah, this guy ended up becoming like doing some kind of like crazy special forces stuff in Afghanistan and things like that. But that was a big part of the article about like how at every stage of like going through the military and everything, there'll always be somebody who recognized him, from like those old photos.
This guy. Yeah. And weren't you in Soundgarden? Because he even talks about being in Soundgarden like right when they were kind of blowing up. Because there's other bands from Seattle that were popular but weren't as big, right? Jesus, what are they called? Like, I think Metal Church is from Seattle, who actually, a few of those people are techs for Metallica, actually. They actually sold a fair amount of records in their heyday. But I compared it to the Squad.
Yeah.
Like, when we think of the Squad, the media makes it sound like there's 4 women in Congress and they're like this unified Avengers like team, because that was a slur almost that Donald Trump threw at them, that they then took and flipped it and turned it into some marketing, and the press just kind of went with that. And that's the Squad. We're going to expand the Squad in this next election, and yada yada yada. Who's part of the Squad? And we were saying, I was like, grunge to me is like the way we look at the Squad. It's not like Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib put their fists together and yelled out "Squad assemble," right? That wasn't what got them where they are. That wasn't their motivation, and I don't really think that's who they are necessarily in Congress, but that's who the press wants to, they paint a picture. And the same thing to me is with grunge, where a picture got painted of what people think that music is. What's the movie? Is it Singles or Say Anything with Winona Ryder?
I think Say Anything.
Is it Say Anything with Ben? I keep wanting to say Burgess.
No, I was not Say Anything or Singles. To the record, yeah.
Ben, oh God, his dad just passed away. It's something about Mary. Ben. Oh, what is his name? Jewish fellow.
Well, that narrows it down.
Really funny. His mom's an actress too. I think she just passed away. He's married to the woman that played Marsha Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. Ben Stiller. Yeah. Ben Stiller's in that movie. I think Janine Garofalo's in that movie. Is that Say Anything? I always forget. Or is that Singles? You don't remember? Anyway.
No. I think about
Ethan Hawke plays a guy in a grunge band, and I wouldn't even say the music that he was doing was generic of grunge, because I can't put my finger on what that music sounded like, but I know what people looked like that played it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, funny that this is the second time today that the Janine Garofalo has come up in conversation.
I saw that earlier in the show.
Yeah.
She was on Majority Report.
yeah. She was an original co-host of the Majority Report. It's bizarre to think about, but yeah, right. So it seems like, okay, grunge really means like rock music produced by people in the Pacific Northwest wearing plaid, more than like what the actual music was, which, is kind of, I think there's probably some truth to that. Although it's also funny because like one of the things that I thought about when you said that is, do you ever, I don't know, maybe it's kind of a funny question, but do you ever read Ozzy Osbourne's autobiography? No,
I would be frightened to.
Okay. It's actually pretty good. Like by the standards of rock memoirs, I think it's a good book.
Did it come out? Did it come out after the whole incident with him and Sharon? He choked her.
Yeah, it did, because I think they talk about that at the very end.
Sad.
Yeah, but he, but it's a good, it's a good book. I mean, you could speculate about how much he wrote it, and how much it might be like, how much like
you most sort of that stuff is dictated.
Have to read it as like a novel that the ghostwriter, was inspired to write by like whatever Ozzy mumbled at him. But
most of that stuff is dictated. I don't know if you read The Dirt, the Motley Crue book, The Dirt. I don't even know if you're a fan of Motley Crue. I unfortunately am a huge Motley Crue fan, and that was definitely written by those guys, at least dictated. And they said like, no, say it totally like that. I want dude with all the use.
Yeah. Well, in the Ozzy case, I think it's called This Is Ozzy. He, either he didn't have much to do with it, or he let maybe he just let the ghostwriter like clean it up, because it's like a pretty well written book. But but in there, one of the things he says is that, people said, Black Sabbath was like the first metal band, but he never understood what they meant by that, because as far as he was concerned, they were a blues band who made some spooky songs. And then he kind of goes into how like what's referred to as metal in different eras is completely different, and he doesn't really understand what the like larger category is supposed to be.
It's there's an anthropologist that actually has a series on heavy metal called Metal Evolution, and he actually goes through these different stages of music and how metal is derived from all these things, and he goes down a rabbit hole of different genres of metals and where they come from, and kind of the main link, the starting point for a lot of stuff is Black Sabbath, and I think when I think about Black Sabbath, I think it's the distortion, right? That and the way they used that minor scale, that is kind of the epitome of metal, and everything after you is always going to be a derivative. So where there is a genre, if you will, of Black Sabbath clones and doom metal, I don't know how many people watching the show are going to be metal people, but that's pretty much.
Well, we're going to find out today. We're going to see what the reaction's like to this episode.
I'm always surprised because I usually come on a lot of shows with like metal shirts and people will comment, and I'm like, oh shit, there's more people listening to this shit than I thought. And I definitely have a lot of friends in heavy music that are part of a more. If you want to talk about class distinctions, there's definitely like an elitist metal class that my band has snuck into, not on purpose but totally by accident. That there's definitely aspects of it that I don't like because it is so fucking elitist.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I like metal a lot, although it's also of a particular kind. Like a lot of like I'm like a lot of it's like, okay, so I'm kind of a classic rock dork, so like I like my, Zeppelin and Stones and all that stuff, and so like like Ozzy era Sabbath sort of fits in very naturally, to that, but I'd also, I think, and I even like some like stuff that's like the sort of like Orchid stuff that's like trying really, really hard to be Ozzy era Sabbath. Like I still enjoy that, that's but I mean, I think like the things that are like, but I think everything that I like is like very much like sort of stonerish or sort of metal light. It's like the it's like I like my Black era, Black Album era, Metallica, I like
Did Forrest send you the message that I fucking sent him?
No, what did you send him?
I literally sent him a message about this.
What do you say?
I said my goal today is to talk to Ben Burgess about post Black Album era Metallica.
Okay, sure.
I find it fascinating because I know I'm a little older than you. I got you by like 3 or 4 years, but we came up probably around the same time where Metallica didn't really have videos. So when I was in junior high, all the metal kids that like Metallica, you were an outcast. And it wasn't stadium rock music. It wasn't even radio rock music. There was no mandatory Metallica. It was just, this is underground music that is somehow these a-holes got on a major label. And I probably might have told you the story. I actually ran into James Hetfield at a Sizzler.
No.
Okay. I was about 12 or 13 years old, and then Justice for All had just came out. And a good friend of mine, who's also in an amazing band called Unjust, and he's an animator at Pixar, had dubbed for me and Justice for All. And my mom, don't know what wild hair got in her patootie, said we're going to go to Sizzler, which was like a treat. And if you don't know what Sizzler is, it's like I don't know if they have them anymore. It's a chain of restaurants that has like an all-you-can-eat salad bar. And we sit down, and my mom, for the first time, gave me a plate and was like, you can go to the salad bar on your own. Like, I'm not going to get you your food. You're going to do this on your own. I was like, fuck yeah, I'm grown. I got this fucking dubbed Metallica tape. And as I'm in the salad bar and I'm all looking at the shit I'm putting, you know how you first get there, everything's on the plate. And bam, I hit a person. And I look up, it's James Hetfield. And he looks over at me and he scowls because somebody bumped him in the salad bar. I'm thinking, oh my God, it's James Hetfield. He knows I just dubbed this tape. Like that was the first thought in my head, like, oh my God, he knows. So he sees, because he looks over and then he looks down because I'm a small kid. And then he laughed after he noticed that there's a scared child staring up at him. And I still was kind of scared because I'm like, oh my God, he knows. And so he happened to sit, didn't even notice them when we got into the restaurant, but they were sitting next to us. So here I am eating next to James Hetfield and his girlfriend at the time. And they can't stop laughing at me because they think, he's like, some fucking kid just ran into me. I got scared. I don't know why. Maybe it's because, well, look, I don't know. He doesn't know that I dubbed this tape. So I haven't seen him since then.
Yeah,
I've tried.
I guess given Metallica, interest in shutting down Napster and all that, like there's something kind of perfect about that.
But so here's the thing about that. To bring it back to something, people, I don't want to hear about music. I go on Jacobin and they want to have a whole show about how the industry's changed.
Mm-hmm.
About how these companies are stealing from artists, and Taylor Swift has this fucking heartfelt demand for the rights to her music. And I was like, hold up. Isn't that everything we hated Metallica for in 99? Literally. Hey, you're selling our music. We don't have a say in this. Shut up, millionaire. People like Eminem jumped on the bandwagon with Metallica soon after. There's a lot of people that were making money because they saw what the industry didn't see, and that was the access people had to music, which was something that people paid for and had a certain relationship with. And this is just my opinion. I don't have any real data to back it up, but doing all the major festivals in America from a financial standpoint, looking at the numbers, I did put some of these numbers together for something that I was doing for a job at one point in time. There seems to be some sort of disconnect people have with music because it's just so easy to get now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something to be said about going to a record store and thumbing through records and seeing these cool covers. And if you're old enough to have gone to a record store, or even people that are younger and collecting vinyl now, I'm sure there are people that have purchased records because A, a label they saw and they're like, oh, that label puts out good music, and B, a cover that you saw. Right. Or if you're really a digger, you'll be like, oh, this guy played on this album, and this is a player that I follow because I know when he plays horns, it's going to be a badass record. So that's easier to do when you're typing, but it loses something when you're not digging, because that's the treasure, right?
Yeah.
And there's a huge disconnect because of the way we get music so easily now. And when you look at festivals, unless it's a cultural phenomenon festival like a Coachella, the numbers just really aren't that good. And you'd be surprised at how much money people lose. And my last year before the pandemic, really working for a big time food and beverage company doing all the numbers, we were down like 30 or 40% as far as festivals not making it. I mean, I'm talking like major markets, places like New York were just cutting festivals left and right because they just weren't making money. So unless you had something like a theme, I would say like the rave, the rave music always does well. So EDC is maybe one of the biggest ones in North America, if not the biggest, like 175,000 people a day. And then you have Coachella, and then there's a few other small ones that make like really good money, but they tend to be the ones that make money tend to actually cater to an older crowd. which is another thing people don't like to hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry. You know, old Cella made a lot of money. You know, 6 artists, and the door is still open at 11 for 6 artists. It was what, the Rolling Stones, the Who, Bob Dylan, Roger Waters, Paul McCartney. And, you know, those guys brought in not the same amount because it was a little smaller than Coachella, which something like 60 up 70,000 people a day to see 6 bands compared to, you know, double that number to see 100 bands on 11 different stages, or 12, 20, maybe 20 different stages. So, you know, 6 artists is a lot smaller production cost as well. So, you know, when you're talking about these things making money, we look at it from dollar per head.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that walks in the door, how much are you making off everyone that walks in the door? So themed things tend to work better than I'm going to try to get every large artist that's popping right now per Spotify plays to try to fill this massive area that I've locked everyone into for 3 or 4 days. So yeah, sorry to go on a
no, fair enough. Yeah,
because when we talk about, I don't know, like being on that show and talking about music, I wish we would even had more time, because there's definitely like a class component to music and who gets to come up. And you said you're a classic rock fan. I think the first Guns N' Roses record is one of the greatest records of all time. Before I die, I hope at some point I can just meet Slash. He is a bit of an inspiration for me to play guitar. He's one of the people that made me feel comfortable to be a black dude and play guitar.
Yeah, no, I think I don't know. I mean, like, I think Guns N' Roses. I think, yeah, Appetite for Destruction is great. After that, like, this is a little like I don't know. I feel weird saying this, but it's like one of those bands that it's like, I think if you have Appetite for Destruction and you have some sort of greatest hits album, like that's probably good enough, you know, because like there are gems that are scattered on those later albums, right? Like there are individual tracks, you know, even from, you know, whatever, the Spaghetti Incident and all that stuff that I like. It's just that, like, mostly if you're actually listening to the whole album, you know, like it's not
super overdone. Yeah,
it's not worth it.
But you know, I'm sorry, but just what I was saying about Class was Slash's family is a Hollywood industry family. He was able to call David Geffen and be like, "Hey, I got this demo. I can't do that." Yeah. But the story that you hear of Guns N' Roses, oh, they're Hollywood kids and they're staying in this hovel and they're living off old pizza. And I'm sure there's truth to that, but when you start,
it's a little bit like when was it the try to remember, like the like I think even like Mitt Romney's wife like tells the story about like when he was first like started out at the first company or whatever, and like, you know, their apartment that they were staying in, you know, was the desk was like a board over, you know, with like some cinder blocks, and, you know, it's like, I'm sure some of those details are true, but the impression they give is misleading.
Oh yeah, I've actually been in a room and heard Peter Thiel stories about the early days of like PayPal and shit. So where you're like, yeah, I get it. Rugged.
No, fair enough. Although I guess that is also something that's a little bit, you know, like, because yes, that is interesting, right? Because like, you know, Black Sabbath, which you were talking about earlier, actually is like an extremely working class origin story. Like the
no fingers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that like that you have that like the guitar style comes out of Tony Iommi's Industrial Accident. And I think that even comes out in like some of the you know, I mean, not a lot of it, but I mean, some of the lyrics to some of those songs like have I mean, I think, you know, War Pigs, you know, like could have been like that could have,
and they're
you know,
post World War II kids that kind of survived that shit, right? You know, these kids
yeah, right. Yeah, which and like I think one of the details in that Ozzy autobiography is about like growing up and like most of the things that like they thought of as like playgrounds, you know, like to go play were like actually like bomb sites, you know, from
That's
from
insane, man.
Yeah.
And that comes out in the music, in my opinion, that comes out in the music. So that's why I'm connected to that band, right? And even when Ozzy talks about he's not the biggest Stones guy. I don't know if he hates the Rolling Stones, but he's not the biggest Stones guy. He's like, those are posh motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I know you think they're the hardcore cats. Those are the posh rich kids. The Beatles were the dudes that were like me.
Yeah, right. Which is funny because yeah, that's exactly the opposite of what you'd think. But yeah, I mean, like I think Keith Richards was like an art school kid, you know, before he, you know, before they started Stones. So yeah, definitely. And actually, that's kind of the Beatles connection is kind of funny because something like that I was thinking about while you're talking about that is I love like one of my favorite Ozzy solo things is his cover of, you know, John Lennon, you know, Working Class Hero, which I think is, you know, I think is better than the original, you know, like I love that thing.
You're giving me goosebumps talking about Ozzy, by the way. I remember I couldn't, my mom wouldn't let me have heavy metal stuff in the house from a black house in the inner city, and that shit just was not cool, and it was devil shit. So I remember she like ripped posters off my wall. She was very against it. Now she doesn't give a shit, right? She thinks it's funny,
which is kind of funny because now we're getting that little resurgence of that 80s Satanic Panic with the little Nas thing.
Yeah, I saw that.
Just a little bit, you know.
It is very little. Like dude, if anybody really wants to get a good glimpse of what some of that was like for the 80s metal Satanic Panic, I would say watch the Metal Years, The Decline of a Western Civilization. They have a woman in there that will de-metal your child. If you remember that. She talks about it. This is six. You remember that? And they take a kid like, we confiscated this from one young boy, and he had like the little gauntlet thing, and he had like hammered nails in there because he was going to be so metal. You like we laugh at that now because we're adults, and it's
metal kid.
Dude, metal had me looking into the occult. It definitely had me reading shit that I had no business reading. Had me checking out Mein Kampf from the library. So imagine what that looks like. Little fun kid walking around with this huge. What you reading there, son? Nothing. And people were like really frightened about metal, and when you go back and listen to some of that shit, it's just like it's really childish and foolish, and that's how I felt about watching the Little Nas X video. I was like, you know, this guy isn't a devil worshiper at all. He's pushing a boundary that he feels comfortable to push. It's not like we haven't seen it with artists before. Like, remember Madonna masturbating on stage during the MTV Awards, and everybody was like, holy shit. Or when Madonna kissed the black guy in the Like a Prayer video as she lost her Pepsi sponsorship. Like, that was all it took for her to be like no, too far. It's Black Jesus, and he's weeping, and you're kissing him. Like, we can't have that. No, Madonna.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I think playing with the idea that there's something like, you know, satanic about your music, and like sort of proudly adopting that, and, you know, in some sort of goofy way. I mean, that's sort of obviously, you know, runs through, you know, metal going back. Well, of course, all this kind of funny also because like most of those Black Sabbath songs that deal with that stuff are about how like wicked and evil it is. So
exactly, like Ozzy is so not a Satanist, which I find even more hilarious.
You know, but you know, but I mean, even like whatever, like, you know, Robert Johnson, you know, doing the Devil Blues, you know, like it's a very, very, very well established thing. It's just kind of funny that like this particular like flaring up of it in some incredibly stupid like online kind of way, with the Lil Nas X thing, like kind of revived the
And that
people
that shit
being
had,
horrified by it just a little bit. But yeah.
that shit had real world consequences for people. Like let's think about, Judas Priest is sitting in a courtroom facing murder charges for backwards for subliminal messages on their music because they played a record backwards and they somehow got Do It out of playing a Judas Priest record backwards. And I think they have a book, or Rob Halford has a book, and he talks about this being a very, very pivotal time in his life with the band, because here he is dealing with his own demons and his own even sexuality, trying to suppress that. And now the state's trying to say you're responsible for two, young men that had some drug and alcohol problems, that were depressed, that, listened to this record and decided to hurt themselves. And then we had to think about the propaganda that went into that too. There was also a few movies that came out during the 80s. The Gate, a horror movie from the 80s where the kid plays a record backwards and opens a gate to hell. Trick or Treat with the kid that played Skippy Handelman from Family Ties, who plays a record backwards. That was the best of the bad played the record backwards movies, because as he plays the record backwards, it's actually as if he's playing it forward. So if you remember that scene where he plays it backwards, as he's playing it backwards, like that, it's not even hidden. That's just the fucking song. And he conjures up a spirit that ends up beating up the bullies, and one of those dumbass movies. But those guys, it had real world consequences to them, and if you look at how their imagery somewhat changed after that happens, the satanic imagery for those major bands is gone, and you don't really see it again until probably like the late 90s, early 2000s, as it gets a little resurgence. And then we laugh about that era, because also tied into that, which I had a long conversation with Robbie Martin about this, the QAnon. There's a lot of satanic panic with QAnon, and part of that satanic panic was also the child molestation panic that went on during the early 80s at that same time. So you have things like the McMartin trial. That thing went on for 10 years. One of the most expensive trials in California history is young preschool age children, like the one that just ran out of this room, saying that they were taken to a grocery store basement where virgins were sacrificed, goats were sacrificed. A 10-year trial for this, right? So there's real world consequences to conservatives running rampant, calling for some sort of culture war to be fought.
Yeah. And not just, and I mean, not just conservatives. I mean, conservative Democrats. I mean, it's Tipper Gore, most obviously.
Tipper Gore with the PMRC. And if we remember the PMRC and the Filthy 15, those were metal bands that were alluding to sex and singing about sex. And the only thing that really came out of that was the boon for the record industry, that was the Tipper sticker on your record that guaranteed you were going to sell a few more million copies. Like, go back and look at the metal or hard rock records that had that sticker on it. You're talking like Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue. I think they might say fucking that once.
To throw it in just for Tipper and make sure you got the sticker.
Right, it's like you go back and listen to that and you're like, okay, I dig the record, but I don't really think that this is gonna make my kid, go shoot himself or do a bunch of dope. Maybe do a bunch of dope, I don't know. But and then you have Two Live Crew, and I actually believe. And we had Andrew Hartman on the show recently that actually wrote a book about the culture war. I believe in my soul that there was a racial element to Two Live Crew, getting because now you have hip hop starting to come through the suburbs, and it's always like the most vile and vulgar hip hop. So it wasn't like we got to stop De La Soul from this hippie rap. No, it was NWA was coming through in the suburbs, and Public Enemy, and bands like Two Live Crew. And Two Live Crew, I want to say one of the members is from around here, or the guy that passed away. So I was getting Two Live Crew stuff before the PMRC shit, when the production credit still said Luke Skywalker on the back before he got sued by Lucas. Luther Campbell used to go by Luke Skywalker. And I just remember hearing it going like, this isn't like dope, but I just like the fact that these lyrics are ridiculous. Yeah. Like I remember the hook for one of the songs was, "What is your mama like? Head, sex, and welfare checks." Like that's insane. That's not dope. That's just insane. And think about how many records these guys sold, and they kind of got catapulted into the national spotlight on a free speech issue. And I'm like, is Luther Campbell really the guy I want in front of the Donahue camera right now talking about free speech of all the rappers you could have got? And they became the face of, when we think of the PMRC, I think at this point you think of Banned in the USA, Two Live Crew. I mean, maybe Luther Campbell's the best businessman out of everybody, because he literally marketed the fact that my music is so bad that they want to ban it. He's like the best capitalist of the fucking
yeah, which is a funny thing, because I think actually, like, if you think about more recent versions of the culture war, an argument that you see sometimes is, people saying like, hey, why are you complaining about people doing this or that or the other thing? Because it doesn't really matter, because like this is like the sort of this is like the nobody's really canceled argument, that like, everybody got mad at this person, but whatever, they're doing better than ever. Like why do you care about that? But of course, it is interesting, because in some of what we're talking about, right, like those same arguments could be applied to these conservative villains of these earlier versions of the culture war, that like, look, I mean, whatever, it doesn't matter, like it doesn't, all these people, none of these musicians were destroyed by this attention. If anything, they sold more albums, because people thought it was edgy and dangerous.
We got into an interesting conversation on the Left Flank Vets about that exact question, and someone had said that Lil Nas X is going to be okay, because my point was Lil Nas X came to prominence in the country community with his Old Town Road song, and when you cross over like that, you're making a different kind of money, because you're playing in front of different crowds, and now you're getting sponsorships. And it was kind of, I don't want to say lost, but the retort to that was, well, he's worth like $6 million. He's going to be okay. I'm like, dude, I hate to break it to you, but you can piss that off in a couple good weekends. Sorry. It may sound shitty. People may not agree, because everyone goes, well, if I had, well, it ain't you. You don't have. But let's be realistic. Hang around somebody that's had $6 million and lost it, and you'll be shocked. You will be shocked how quick $1 million goes. First of all, you got a guy singing about doing hard drugs. The only thing that you're going to get free in this industry is hard drugs and sex of choice.
Mm-hmm.
So that shit goes quick. You have a payroll like you wouldn't believe, and everyone is in your pocket. So it's not foolish to me to think that if this kid lost sponsorship dollars and he lost the ability to maybe play certain venues because people don't want to deal with the backlash, much like athletes like a guy like Tim Tebow,
mm-hmm.
is he not in the league because of ability, Or is he not in the league because people didn't want to deal with what you have to deal with when you bring on someone like that? Same thing can be said for a guy like Michael Vick.
Mm-hmm.
A problem with Michael Vick was not so much ability, right? But he comes with PETA baggage.
Right.
And can that kid shake this off? And people kind of, was like, it's not a big deal. I was like, I get what you're saying, but, understand he's one of the few people that can play Coachella and play the festival the following weekend, which is Stagecoach, which is a country music festival.
Yeah.
He could go out with these big country artists. Country sells a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's bigger than people think. Right. And to lose that for him could be big. Because he doesn't have a strong foot in like the black community. It's not like people out here bumping fucking Old Town Road in Oakland, California. Yeah. No one's checking for Little Nas X out here. He had, go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, like, it is also something that I think more progressive people used to take more seriously are those consequences, you're talking about, right? Like I certainly remember, during the Bush years, when conservatives were canceling the Dixie Chicks, people, people on, the anti-war left or liberals, like took that pretty seriously as a like, hey, look at how repressive this atmosphere has gotten right now. That they faced this consequence, for speaking, actually in a very mild way, speaking out against Bush. I think they said they were embarrassed that, that he came from Texas. That was the whole comment.
When they were touring in arenas, they said that at the height of their fame, let's keep that in mind, so you take on ask Sinead O'Connor about what one loses when you piss off a certain segment of society. When was the last time you heard her name in America? So for all the UK listeners that are like, oh, well, she had that. No, in America, not on the rare bootleg fucking Only My Five Friends Have It album you have with her on there. Not of her one appearance on a Massive Attack record, 20 years ago. I think it was 20 years ago. She was on a Massive Attack record. One of my favorite songs of theirs, actually. Ask her about the cost. I think she paid it.
So actually, I'm trying to remember Sinead O'Connor. I mean, the picture of the Pope. That's right. And I mean, I think that there is this is a weird thing because I think a lot of progressive and even leftist people now are pretty like cavalier about this stuff, right? Like they're very quick to say, oh, this person, this person will be fine. They have nothing to worry about. Which, I mean, I guess in a certain sense, when you're talking about celebrities, I mean, I don't think, I don't know what the threshold is, for being fine, that your career is the way that it was, that you're not going to be, out on the street, scrounging for food, from like the bottom of a trash can somewhere, like in that sense, sure, you'll be fine, but not the, certainly not the way you were. And then like and then I guess, the question is, do you want to live in the kind of culture where where people are, are worried that, at least compared to where they're at, like that they won't be fine in that sense. And they're thinking, and they're thinking twice about what they say, because of that. And then of course, I mean, in particular, like the same things do happen, like in, like the catch-22 when you're talking about this is that any like instance that you talk about that anybody's ever heard of, is going to involve somebody famous. And so if they're famous, then it's easy to say, oh, well, whatever, they'll be fine. They're famous and, you know, they're rich, whatever. But of course there are like numerous times when people have been, like, you know, oh, actually, here, let me find this. The one of my all-time favorite examples of this. So there was a couple of years ago, there was this reporter at the Des Moines Register, Aaron Calvin, who was doing he was writing what was supposed to be a feel-good story about some 24-year-old kid who'd won like it was like some contest sponsored by Bud Light or something like that.
Okay.
And he had, but while researching the story, he found like this, like, I don't know, bad or offensive tweets that the guy had written like as a teenager, you know, several years before. And so he included them in the article, and the guy ended up losing the sponsorship or whatever. And then in retaliation, people dug up this reporter's like bad old tweets from like 15 years before or something, and he got fired from the Des Moines Register. And it just seems like the kind of thing, you know, where it's like, you know, it does happen a lot, like, you know, like, and not just to famous, you know, to famous people. And I think some people on the left are like a little hesitant about acknowledging that because they associate these complaints with people that they often find for.
So-and-so is rich and therefore they'll be fine. And I think people don't understand that not everybody is as rich as you think. I mean, Ben, how many people think you're rich?
Yeah, no, like
there's people that think you're rich. Yeah,
there are definitely people who think that I'm rich, who think that if you like, I'm not gonna embarrass Jacobin by saying on air how much they pay, but it's not very much. Like, that's you know.
So I heard from somebody else how much. Yeah. Because we were talking about some of them earlier today. So
yeah. And like 95% of the money that comes in for this show is like going directly to pay Forrest. So, you know, like, that's
go back into the show so you can give people a quality program. No, look, you're preaching to the choir about that, homeboy. I had Shahid Buttar on last night with a mutual friend of ours, Doug Lane.
Yeah.
Because I told Doug, I was like, Doug, I watched your Glenn Greenwald video and I love the way you took a match and threw it into the gasoline of your career and lit it on fire. And I figured, why not get two guys that definitely have something to say on the show about a quickness to cancel or whatever, right?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah, I had Shahid on during you know, when he was still running back in like October or something. Which yeah, I mean, the two reasons I had him on back then. Well, I mean, also he was running against Nancy Pelosi, and that's, you know, like that's worth, you know, trying to boost in some small way. But like, one, he'd had like, you know, there was the, you know, connection with Michael Brooks before, and, you know, and so like I'm very like I'm very much of a sucker for that, you know, since like you know, whatever sort of unprocessed stuff I'm still going through from that, you know, that like sticking up for people who people are mad at, you know, who are associated with him, you know, is still something that I'm always going to do, you know. But then the second thing is, I think what you're talking about, because this is like a real problem, like in and like in Shahid's case, like especially like I think I always say that wrong. Shahid. They had Shahid, yeah. On Shahid's case, especially, like this is like really like, if we're gonna do this, like if every time somebody says, "Oh, this figure on the left did something terrible," you know, to me or to somebody I know or whatever, if we just accept that without like asking for evidence and like having like just even like real like minimalistic stuff that it would have taken in this case, just like, you know, just take a couple of weeks and talk to everybody, talk to him, get his story, talk to other people there, get their stories. Like if you're not even going to do that, if you're just going to say nope right away, 10 seconds later, we believe victims, and that's that, then like you're going to make yourselves the easiest mark ever. Like if we ever got to the point where the radical left posed enough of a threat that the powers that be had a reason to do COINTELPRO again, God, it would be so much easier this time.
Look, I went to go see Shahid after that shit happened. And he was pretty shook by it. And I think he was hurt because he had built a following locally because he's such a good orator.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, man. You put a camera in front of this motherfucker and he just drops gems. And I think people really believed in the opportunity for him to defeat Nancy Pelosi, who's kind of become, as we've kind of awoken to the horrors that she's a part of, one of the most powerful women, not just in the Democratic Party, but in politics in general. Powerful people. I don't want to discredit. No, powerful people. Male or female. And he was taking on the MF Empower structure. And I don't think it was I definitely asked him. I said, "Did you feel like this was a hit job, brother?" So he's bringing up some old shit. And he honestly didn't feel that way. But he definitely felt like he got sold out. And he definitely felt like people turned on him and felt very comfortable to turn on him. And so he goes and does a show last night. And this morning, someone said, so the guy Ryan, I don't follow Twitter very much. I literally use it to read something that someone I know is saying that's interesting, i.e. Ben Griscom. Right? If you've watched my show, I say you can message me on there. That's I don't know how to say mean shit about people and then have other people like it. Like I just don't get it. And Shahid had said something in a I wouldn't say a mild defense of the Ryan the socialist guy, and people really started like, this was today. And people started jumping on him and saying, "Oh, didn't you sexually assault somebody and you yelled at some staffers?" And and he sends me this. He's like, "Hey, man, this is going on right now, just so you can see. Maybe you want to say something, yada yada yada." And I'm like, I'll be honest. I was like, part of me wants to say something, but I don't exist. I do a show online, but my life isn't online. Right. So I don't know how to handle fucked up shit people say. Because when I toured as a musician, if someone said something fucked up online, they would probably come see me at a show. Because that was the next thing I was going to say. Well, bitch, I'm going to be in your city in 5 days. So say it to my face. I don't like name calling behind a keyboard.
Yeah, right.
Or finger wagging behind a keyboard.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I hope I don't offend you by saying this. I feel like if Brooks was alive, this situation would probably play out a little different. I'm not saying he would have beaten Nancy Pelosi. I just think the situation would have played out a little different had Brooks been around, because
he would have been a prominent voice, defending him when all that happened. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I mean, I don't think I don't know how differently it would have played out, but I think he would have I think he would have stuck with him. I mean, look, even credit where credit's due. I mean, like there were other higher profile than TMBS, places that did.
They had him on, but then those places, and then there became this weird, well, these guys aren't real leftists, and these guys are grifters, and these guys are this.
Sure. Well, like at this point, at this point, grifter means someone
agree with you.
someone who disagrees with you, and like maybe somebody who disagrees with you, and like any part of what they do for a living has to do with politics, although sometimes, frankly, just people who disagree with you, period.
A goddamn plumber's a grifter because I do not agree with this bill.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and so, yeah. No, that's
I was shook to give a response, Ben. I was shook to give a response because first of all, Shahid can defend himself online and in real life, physically and verbally.
Yeah.
He doesn't need my punk ass assistance.
Yeah.
I have stuck up for him in the past online, and it ends up pissing me off. And then I thought about it, I was like, how does this affect me? This dude said so the Ryan the Socialist guy had said something about, he's always shitting on the progressives and whatever. He was doing some shitting on DSA thing. And
yeah.
And I was like, DSA threw him under the bus.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, sure. So of course it's going to be like a little more sympathetic. Look, I think that cards on the table, I think, what is it? What do we call it? Ryan the Socialist guy, and the proud, so whatever that guy's
whatever
name.
His name is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just call him old boy. Old boy.
Old boy. Yeah. Yeah, good movie. Like, cards on the table. Old boy seems kind of dumb to me. He sort of seems like one of those like Twitter personas whose entire thing is like, the whole way he processes politics is like all filtered through like Twitter drama and podcasts and sort of posturing to get people to slow clap for him. But also like, God
damn, Ben, you shit on old boy's life.
But also, like, DSA did not have Shahid's back, and like I do not blame him for being mad about that.
No, they don't have his back on a level that I can't get into on air necessarily, because people told me some stuff in confidence that were at some of these meetings where they were deciding if they were going to rescind their endorsement. But it was on some super duper silly shit. The conversations people were having, and the conversations weren't around trying to take political power. It was almost about trying to have some sort of moral superiority, and that's shit is silly shit to me. So Shahid sends me this post in a local paper here called the San Francisco Examiner, and a school board vice president has been forced to resign over a tweet. A black woman who's on the school board in San Francisco. Just so people know, the racial makeup of San Francisco, not a lot of colored folks there.
Right.
So she's on the school board, and she had made a statement a few years ago I believe on Twitter, about Asian allies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she used the phrase Tiger Mom, and she referred to them as house N-words.
Okay.
And said something along the lines of, you don't understand, if you're aligning yourself with on the right side of these policies, right as in right wing, you'll be next.
Okay.
And if immigration reform doesn't, just because you think these brown people are going down, don't think you won't go down too, because a house in is still an in.
Gotcha.
Pretty powerful words, but I get it. That's now anti-Asian violence and hate.
Yeah. Like, and again, the thing is, because when I talk to people about this, a lot of times, like the two things they'll say to me are either like, they'll sort of like try to like, pick an example, like, oh, so are you saying that it wouldn't be okay to, you know, if Ted Bundy were alive and on Twitter to like, you know, to you know, like drag him for, you know, on Twitter, you know, like or you say like and they'll sort of come up with these extreme examples and like, okay, no, I'm not saying that. But then, like, although I also don't know what the point of that would be. You know, like if Ted Bundy is out there killing people, I don't know what, like, you know, dragging him on Twitter is supposed to add to it. You know, like is supposed to accomplish.
What is he really going to say? Yeah, what is he going to say on Twitter?
You know, but it's like, or you know, they'll want to get into an argument about the actual thing that somebody said. And in this case, look, I haven't read these tweets you're talking about. Like, it could be that she was making like ultimately like a good point, like maybe expressed a little harshly. It could be that like it could be maybe look at the tweet and say, oh, that's kind of, you know, that's like, you know, that's like a bad tweet, whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. But like I think we should be more worried about having like people have these like huge like professional and personal consequences over bad tweets, because like, you know, I mean, yeah, you have a healthier relationship with you know, Twitter and stuff than I do. You know, I use it way too much, but like, but I don't know about you. Like, the average amount of time between having a thought and tweeting it out is like not very long. You know,
or a comment. Like, you know where I fuck up? You know where I fuck up? I read the comments, man.
Yeah,
I read the comments sometimes.
Which God, yeah, I remember being out with, like, I guess it probably would have been like summer of 2019. One of the times I was on TMBS in studio, and I was out with Michael and his girlfriend later at the restaurant where I always like to go to after Brooklyn. And I was asking him like a question about like something that like somebody had said in a YouTube comment, and probably shouldn't even be repeating this on air, but I will. And you know, I was like, oh, I'm a little worried. Somebody said such and such. Am I coming off like that? And you know, and he like spent like 5 minutes, like in a, you know, ultimately friendly and supportive way, but like, you know, giving me shit about like the fact that I was reading YouTube comments. he was like, look, most of them are good and supportive anyway, but also, come on, you're reading a comment that somebody wrote on, you know, think about the person who writes a YouTube comment, even if it's a positive comment. This was such a Michael thing to say. It's not the act of a winner.
That's a good one. Teray just chastised me. Actually, Teray Reed gave me a bunch of shit for reading the comments. He's like, he goes, "What are you, a masochist? Fuck you reading the comments for?" And I love. He's like my big brother. I fucking love Teray. And fucking. I got into this dude over comments because I was very, very nervous about putting our shit on Zero Books.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, that's a very white ass space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I do a Zero Book show and we clean it up and we make sure we don't have inner city slang for people. Like, I give Doug a show that we do, and
yeah,
I forget that audience isn't the same. Well, now it's a little bit, it's similar, but there were some people that said some real fucked up shit, and it kind of pissed me off. And I went back and forth, and I thought about it, and I'm like, Teray's right.
Yeah.
Michael's right. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, what do you?
Why am I sitting here fucking reading the comments? You know, why am I sitting here going back and forth with people on social media? Like, I don't have my direct messages open so you can send me, you know, fuck you messages. And for the most part, people don't send me fuck you messages. Actually. You know, they're just probably as you get, they're pretty supportive and have advice or
99% of the time, yes. Every once in a while, somebody does send a fuck you message, but yeah,
and they can, you know, and then you keep it moving, right? And but it fucks up your day. It's fucked up my day where I'm like mad, and my kid's sitting here and he wants to play, but I want to read. I'm like, you know what? I'm turning all this shit off, and we finna go watch Wheels on the Bus.
Fair enough. Yeah, and again, like that's the thing, like. You know, most like the media, what the medium rewards is spending like 2-3 seconds maximum thinking about what you're about to say and then saying it. And like that's what it's all set up for you to do. And like so I think like having serious personal or professional consequences for something that you like thought about for 3 seconds, like just seems like a bad way to have a society be. And it's especially insane. I mean, like, look, at least thank God, like, you know, when I was actually like, some of these stories are about people, you know, like the woman at Teen Vogue, you know, who are facing these consequences because of things they literally tweeted as teenagers. So at least like, thank God, when I was a teenager, Twitter did not exist, because I could not imagine the stupid shit that I would have tweeted if it had.
Imagine people losing their job over their MySpace page.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's like, I mean, if you had, because like, yeah, it's like almost like, you know, I mean, I imagine having Twitter as a teenager or whatever. It's like, yeah, so like, I imagine like, you know, like, yeah, 1997 or whatever, somebody's like following me around with the tape recorder, you know, waiting for me to like say stupid shit, which I certainly did.
I certainly did. So you had. Why are we not allowing people to mature and apologize for bad behavior?
Right.
Two pretty famous people that I think, maybe you disagree, maybe people will disagree. I think the Beastie Boys, for what it's worth, have done a pretty good job of disavowing their bad behavior and things they said as very young men in an era where those things were totally acceptable to say. Eddie Murphy has come back and said a lot of the things that he's done and said were cringeworthy from his heyday of comedy. And when you see him now, he's not the same man that he was in 1984 doing Delirious. Those aren't the same. You know, he understands he can't do it. He doesn't want to do that. Look at how far Dave Chappelle has come. Which shit for you for saying.
Well, I mean, Dave Chappelle, like, I mean, I think it's a related problem. It's a slightly different problem, but like, you know, I think that's also a thing that is a problem, because when Dave Chappelle was at his peak, he was like, that was just a very different world in terms of how comedy was received, and, you know, and how people did that. And I have to say, to my mind, in certain ways, a better one, because I think that people, certain ways, not like, you know, you could say certain kinds of, you know, fucked up and bigoted things that, like, I think it's progress, you know, that like, you know, that people would have more of a problem with now. But the respect in which I think it's better is that I think that because of a lot of things, because of the rise of Twitter, you know, because of, you know, just the sort of general way that the culture has drifted in our strange, atomized neoliberal hellscape, that, like, I think the amount of leeway that was given for, like, when, like, Chappelle Show was on, for, hey, this is comedy, when people are saying things in context of comedy, you know, they're not like literally telling you what they think. That's not what the art form is. And I think now it's, that seems to be less true. Like when Chappelle, was it like a year? Wow. Okay. Time all blurs together with the pandemic, but
and Chappelle's been shitting out specials left and right.
I know, right? So this was like 3 specials ago, but like 2019, Sticks and Stones, that was the one people got mad about. And like a lot of the reactions to Sticks and Stones, I thought, were like showing that people really didn't, like, a lot of these people, and I'm not just talking about like random idiots on Twitter, although there were also a lot of those, you know, but even like people who were like reviewing it in, like, you know, your Salon, Slate, you know, places like that, like literally like reading these reviews, like, do you understand that you're like watching a comedy show that people are not saying, like, this is not like a political speech, you know, that you know, that people say that he's not getting up there and just like explaining what he thinks about the world, that this is that like, and that's not even like what, like if he was, that would be a terrible comedy special, because what would be the point, right? Like, and don't get me wrong, there is plenty of stuff like that now, right? Like the sort of that's like the Samantha Bee kind of thing, that, you know, you just sort of like say liberal talking points and in a certain tone of voice, and people clap for you and laugh, and, you know, sort of laugh and clap at the same time. But but like actual comedy, that's not what you should be doing. Like the sorts of things that he's doing on that special are, he's sort of like thinking aloud about the ambiguities of things, and trying to milk that for humor. And some of the responses to this were like something that you would expect from like an internal memo in like a Romanian like state censorship office in the 1970s. That like there's literally a line in that special where he says, he says, I am what is known as a victim blamer. When I first heard about Michael Jackson, my first thought was, what were those kids wearing? And like some of these reviews, like the reviewers seemed to think that he was like actually saying that, you know, like that's like, you know.
and then it's like, well, he has influence on people. It's like, is that really? Is that what you? Okay, all right. Well, yeah. It's
like. Right. I mean,
imagine if you know, Ben. Imagine if Michael Richards never had those people record him having that N-word tirade.
Yeah.
I don't know Michael Richards personally. I've never been around people that hang with him. I'm not saying this in a negative light. He's not in my sphere of people that I'm close with.
Sure.
But I definitely saw that happen, and I thought to myself, and I've been to the Comedy Store and you're not supposed to have it now. You know, you can't have a camera, and when you go in there, I don't know if you've ever been there. It's actually pretty cool. Big ass artists come in there and try shit out.
Yeah, on
random ass nights, and you're gonna see people bomb. I saw Tiffany Haddish kind of bomb.
Yeah,
you know, and she didn't call anybody any names, but it just jokes didn't hit the way she wanted them to hit. And seeing dude flail out like that and the crowd really giving it to him. And again, I'm not saying he was justified in anything that he said or did, but boy, oh boy, did Kramer's ass get the hook.
Yeah, right. And yeah, which is an interesting one, because like certainly like when I heard that, like, I mean, and you know, I think that when that happened, like I thought, wow, this is unbelievable, you know, like that's you know, like Jesus Christ, I did not think Michael Richards, you know, would say this. I do wonder now, like, I don't know. I mean, I don't, like, I mean, clearly that was not like a good thing for him, like on any level, right? To say, you know, like, but I do wonder how much he was trying to, in that context, like when he's doing, like what was the setup? People were like heckling him. The guy says, like, my friend thinks you're not funny. And like, and he's trying to sort of like recover his like stride. And like, I think that maybe like there's a certain way that like some comics would handle that like could actually pull it off, where they like say something really offensive and that's so over the top that like nobody thinks, oh, this is like, you know, this is like really what he's saying. But yeah, now, if he was trying to do that, he failed spectacularly. Like I think that's, you know, like,
and again, another guy into the gasoline of my career. Look, man,
he's never come back for, like, actually, that's a good point. Like that was like 2005 or something.
Hell
Uh,
long ago.
and he has never come back from that. Like
Look,
I think this might be the first time since that I've heard his name.
I'm finna name drop like a motherfucker right now because I
Nice.
think it's
Let's do
funny.
it.
So, working a festival for the company I work for, the dude that I was out with was like the worst dude to go out work with because he was kind of a higher up and he never liked to work, and he brought me along because he knew I was going to do all this work. And working at a festival for me requires me to just be in an office all day, and I don't really care to see the acts, but this festival in particular had two artists I wanted to see: Bjork and Sleep. So if you're a fan of Sleep. So think about a festival where you're going to see Sleep, Bjork, Missy Elliott was there. It's a pretty cool festival. It doesn't exist anymore. And he goes, "Hey man, come with me to the Comedy Store." We're sharing a hotel room. He goes, "Come with me to the Comedy Store. Chris D'Elia, we have to go give Chris D'Elia a device." Okay. And I was like, "Okay, who's Chris D'Elia?" He's like, "You don't know Chris D'Elia?" I was like, "Nah, man, you drop more names than me." So we go to the thing, right? Chris D'Elia gets us in. We have this table, right? He comes up to us after the show, and we had seen again, like there's like supposed to be like 3 people actually performing, and Chris D'Elia was going to headline that night, but the unknowns get bumped for, I think Howie Mandel bumped somebody, Tiffany Haddish bumped somebody, and David Spade bumped somebody. That's pretty cool, right? You bought a ticket to see your friend tell shitty jokes, and all of a sudden all these other people are trying out material. So D'Elia tells us, "Oh, upstairs there's a roast battle." And that guy was hosting it, Jeffrey, what's his name? He does all the roast stuff. Jeffrey Ross.
Okay, yeah.
He goes, "Go up there and sit with Jeffrey Ross." And we go up this fucking staircase, and certain security guy has to make sure you're okay, and we get the fucking rock star okay, and we're sitting at the fucking side of the room with Jeffrey Ross and all these people on TV, and I'm like, "Oh, this is how you should spend your time in LA." And in this room, again, another no cameras, it's a bunch of comedy writers for shows that everyone watches on TV and streaming shows, and up and coming comedians saying the meanest, foulest shit you can ever imagine. That makes Michael Richards' fucking tirade look like a nursery rhyme.
Right.
And we all laughed our balls off.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what I was saying. Like, like thinking back to that Michael Richards thing, like I wonder, like if because like if you're just hearing it the way that we all heard it, like as like a like a 1 minute like hate screed, like just insanity, that like yeah, it's like I mean it's then like then yeah, I mean like in that minute he sounds like a Nazi, but like in the but in that context, right, where like he might be, you might have been like people might have been sitting there for hours and like, like they heard all kinds of offensive things, probably, from comedians in that, environment. Then like I could see him not thinking that people were going to receive that, like, quite the way they did. Plus also, like, I'm guessing, I don't know. I've never, that's the only minute of Michael Richards stand-up I've ever heard, so I don't know what the rest of it's like. But
the rest is just dick jokes.
yeah, the rest of it's just dick jokes. But I'm also guessing that since like he was a guy that we all know because he was on Seinfeld and he's not Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. Like if I had to take a wild shot in the dark, I'd guess that he's probably not actually a very funny stand-up. So it's like if he's, I don't know, right? I mean, this might be unfair. I just tend to assume that people that we mostly know as actors who also do stand-up and whatever, that, it's probably not great. So like if he's trying to play that game where he's responding to a heckler by saying some like over the top offensive things that are
Mhm.
so over the top that is not like, people aren't supposed to take it seriously or whatever, then like I could imagine him just not being very good at that, right? Like, and then we end up with that minute that everybody heard.
Mhm. And also too, that world is a world where when they're not on, they're on. They're kind of like on all the time. Like that's why I'm like totally terrified of Will Ferrell, because Will Ferrell seems like he's just on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to meet Will Ferrell, but I think people would be surprised if they saw a guy like that around other comedians, and the way people handle hecklers, the shit they say amongst themselves. And again, I think that particular thing was part of the I don't want camera phones
Right.
anymore at shows, because people are taking shit and running the TMZ with it. When I was on tour with Yo Gabba Gabba, I was out with, I don't know the guy's name, but some of the talent for the night, we had a special celebrities every night. We were at a bar across the street from the venue in Atlanta called the Fox, and we were watching the baseball playoffs,
Yeah.
2010. So the Giants were in it. So I'm watching the Giants, and it's the blonde guy that was in Talladega Nights. He always plays kind of a simple man.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And the other guy is in a bunch of movies actually with him, and I can't remember that guy's name. But anyway, the blonde guy, we're sitting talking, watching baseball, and the blonde guy grabs a beer, and he's drinking a beer. It was the only beer he had. He only had a beer. And as he's putting it to his mouth, someone comes up and tries to take a picture of him. And he says, "Sir, can you please not take a picture of me? Because, you take that picture of me, you put it on the internet, you give it to TMZ, all of a sudden I'm an alcoholic. So would it be too much to ask for you to erase that? I'll take a picture with you if that's really what you want, but just please don't take a picture of me drinking a beer." And think about that for a second, Ben.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Mr. Burgess is a man that likes to enjoy a tasty beverage, and you drinking a beer all of a sudden is something that you can't have someone photograph,
Right.
because it may be negative to your career to the point where you might not be able to get work. And that's what that blew me away, seeing that whole exchange, because he was very, very polite about it. He's like, "Hey, I'll take a picture with you if that's what you want, but I just can't have you do that."
Yeah.
And the dude was still kind of mad. The guy who took the picture was still kind of upset for whatever reason, right? So this canceling shit, or whatever people want to call it, does have like real world consequences, has financial consequences.
Yeah, and it's sure. So there are financial consequences, which, by the way, actually, let's save that part. But there's also just like there's also just the social consequence of living in that world where you feel like you're constantly under surveillance, that we're all doing like mutual surveillance all the time, and it's, that somebody can stick the picture, stick the clip on the internet, and that's just a bad way to exist. And I think, what the solution is for that is complicated, although I will say that on the financial front, and as far as those consequences go, like, obviously it doesn't solve the problem that we've been talking about, because people who are in these positions, like, it's just a different thing, and this won't help it, right? But as far as normal people, who are faced with those potentially bad financial consequences, which lots of normal people are. I mean, this is one of the reasons that, like, one of the worst, like, things that you can threaten somebody with is that you can dox them. You can send your employer, the information about whatever, controversial or bad, thing that they've done online. And as far as normal people go, I mean, I think one of the best solutions to that is just, it's not a very hot take, for a socialist show, but I mean, one of the best solutions to that is just having more unionized workplaces, so it's harder to fire people.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. I mean, imagine losing your job over something you said as a teenager. That sounds ridiculous. That sounds ridiculous. And for the answer to be that person's going to be okay, they'll get another job. It's like, maybe.
What?
But the fact that people feel comfortable firing someone over something that they said as a child means that we're not allowing people to make mistakes and grow. And if you said something at 17 years old, which is a child, I have a child who is 17 right now.
Right.
His black ass is saying dumb shit left and right. And I would hate for the dumb shit he says at 17 to be held against him at 25, 26, 30 years old, especially when he learns that, hey, maybe I don't feel that way anymore. And I'm sorry that I did feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, like, you can't, I mean, if no, it's bad for everybody at every level. Like, I mean, if you can't, like, what you should want, is for people who, who say dumb shit like we all did, we were 17 to, grow up and experience more of life and, gradually, become, slightly less dumb, as most of us do over the course of time. And it stunts that process, because people, never completely get away from what they've said. It makes them less like, also, by the way, from a lefty angle, I mean, like, oftentimes it drives people away from our direction politically, because, like, I think this happens all the time. Like, one, if this stuff happens to you over, wokeness, then, like, you react badly to that, like anybody would. Two, I think oftentimes, especially on the level of people who are in the public eye, when people get mad at them about something like this, look, if the people you used to hang out with won't have you anymore, you find somebody who will, and that's often a way that people drift to the right,
Yep. And they'll make you feel, they'll let you feel comfortable in your mistakes, especially silly shit like maybe misgendering somebody, which I've done. And I was corrected. I apologized, and it never happened again. It didn't come from a mean place on my part. I wasn't trying to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
I just didn't know the person. I was saying, hey, she was like, they, and I was like, oh, my bad.
No, I mean, sure. I mean, that happened to me, like, I don't know, a week or two ago. I was
and you probably, hey, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to offend you. And they go,
no, exactly. Yeah. Like, and I think to be fair, the vast majority of cases like that, that's where that's going to end, because, because I'm sure that people in that scenario, it happens to them all the time, and that's the best case, reaction. The person saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to," like that. But it is also, but that can also be bad online, where people can't read, intent as easily. I mean, that can go wrong, very, very easily. And, like, I don't want to, I just always think about, like, there's like an old episode of Chapo where, I think it was Amber Frost, had a good, was talking about how, like, one of the best things about not being a liberal, being a socialist, is that you can stop morally means testing people in your head. You can just say, like, oh, like, stop thinking about, who deserves help, who deserves this or that. Just say, every bastard deserves better, and I think that is a, that makes sense to me, that's like, that's certainly the ethos that the kind of left that I would want to have anything to do with, would have. Oftentimes, I've got to say, not the left that we actually do have right now.
Because there's no understanding of, like, power and how we call it the circular firing squad of the left, was like the title of the of the show last night. And what you're saying is reminding me of a situation on the Twitters. A woman with a pretty large Twitter following that I follow had said something about 80s movies. She said, the only 80s movie that holds up, that isn't racist, sexist, or homophobic is The Breakfast Club. And I responded, I disagree. I think there's no black people in The Breakfast Club. And for the most part, John Hughes didn't really have black people in his movies. So, of course, they're not going to be racist. The only black people I could think of in a John Hughes movie was the black guy stealing a car with the ethnic guy in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So, I don't think that's a good example of some perfect film, but that's just my opinion.
I'm not usually the guy who's pointed this out, but I think The Breakfast Club was a little sexist, wasn't it? I mean, that's sometimes I'm trying to remember that movie. Like I think that
she said she responded. She goes, "You're right. I'm going to take it down." I sent her a private message. I said, "Please don't take it down. First of all, I don't think you said anything wrong.
Right.
I don't think you said anything offensive." And she said, like, "I'm white and I need to understand my privilege." And I was like, "That's silly shit. That's silly shit. You didn't say anything wrong." I said, "Look, I'm black. I grew up on those same movies, and we're just having a discussion.
Yeah,
and because we're having a discussion, you can't go back and try to be perfect for the world. Like, what you said wasn't offensive. No one should draw any offense to anything you said. You weren't trying to hurt anybody's feelings. This was just your opinion of a movie that holds a certain place in your heart, and that's just the way you feel because you probably went back and watched it, and you're like, this really holds up."
Yeah,
that's fine. We can talk about all the John Hughes.
You should be able to just disagree about a movie.
Doesn't make you racist. It's not because of white supremacy why you feel this way. It's not because of patriarchy why you feel this way. You just liked The Breakfast Club. That's okay. It might come on TV. I may watch it. I've watched it too many times to count. I've watched Home Alone too many times to count. These movies have some elements to them that, may be mildly problematic.
Well,
but that's why Ben Burgess has a show where he talks about movies. We talk about the mildly problematic elements of some of these films. But if you gotta police your own speech because you said something that somebody might have called you on. I wasn't trying to call nobody on nothing. That's why I sent her a private message. I think another problem is when shit like that happens and somebody backs up a little bit, then that echo chamber can start up and people can start pointing fingers at this person. That's why the woman, I think she erased it, but that's why I also wanted to have that conversation off of
you're not trying to call her out. You're just you're just like talking about the movie and like explaining why you disagree, about the movie. And this does seem like a bigger thing too, that I want especially, and look, don't get me wrong, everything that we've been talking about is much bigger than the left. These are much bigger trends, that in fact everybody. But I hate it when they are things that filter into the left and impact, and and that when leftists do these things and these are a big part of the face that we present to the world, because I think that the vast majority of people of any background, if you send them the message that hey, here are a bunch of people who are really interested in closely monitoring all of your pronouncements and your cultural tastes and what comes out of your mouth and what and then scolding you when we judge that those things are bad, then I think any sane person who's not obsessed with politics is going to say, wow, this sound like really annoying people. I want to stay far away from them.
True.
Whereas if it's this are, here are a bunch of people who are normal people. You can talk to about movies. Maybe you'll have some of the same takes. Maybe you'll have different takes. Nobody cares that much. And but what we really care about is that we want you to have like, national health insurance and a union and make more money, and like that sounds like something that I think like a normal human being would want to actually have something to do with.
I want you to have housing.
Yeah, I want you to have housing.
And me disagreeing with this bullshit take you had, or maybe you were wrong. Like, it's okay to be wrong. I'm gonna be wrong. I'm gonna have dates wrong. I might have a off perspective on things. Like, it's okay to be wrong, because if we come from this point of like we're always have to be right, and it's like, well, you can't grow. You know everything. How do you fucking grow when you know everything? Fuck, man.
Yeah. No. Right. Exactly. Yeah. You should be able to you should be able to be wrong. And when we say you should be able to be wrong, we don't mean you should be able to be informed that you're wrong, instantly recognize that you're wrong, do penance, and like ultimately be forgiven. We mean like, no, you could just be like persistently wrong and it's fine. And maybe like, maybe in 2 years you'd be like, oh yeah, that was kind of dumb. I guess not. Yeah. Right.
Like, I don't think that way anymore.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I said those things that might have hurt you.
Yeah.
Or hurt people. Yeah.
Yeah, that like you can, that we, sure. I mean, that like you can, like, yeah, ideally, if your wrongness actually involves like hurting people, then like, if the way you were wrong is that you said, whatever, like you said something dumb about trans people, whatever, then like, yes, it should include that component of like, moral growth. I'm sorry, I'm sorry I said that. If you're wrong about the fucking Breakfast Club, just be wrong. You don't even need to like, you don't even need to apologize for that. You can just be wrong and there's no problem there, right? You should like that shouldn't be any kind of issue.
And for the bigger situation about that is, it's like, how do we look at, if we're supposed to be this left that sees a world with no prisons, how do we see a world with no prisons when we're constantly pointing these moral fingers at people? Like, I have bad news for a lot of people on the left that love pointing fingers about silly shit about tweets. Yeah. Like, God forbid you ever work inside of a homeless shelter. You're gonna wish all you dealt with was fucking bad tweets. You're gonna see the epitome of bad behavior from people that you've probably put into a certain perspective. You probably created the perfect, homeless person for yourself.
Right.
And that shit just doesn't exist. So how do you look at Derek Chauvin, the officer involved in this horrible murder of George Floyd, through an abolitionist lens? Start contemplating that. Start having that discussion.
No, well, exactly. Because like, especially, look, I mean, I think everybody on the left, I mean, even people who wouldn't go as far as like abolitionism about prisons, like everybody on the left at least thinks, and rightly thinks, should think, right? That like, that we should like, ban the box so that people can still get like regular jobs when they get out of prison, that their felonies won't be held against them, and that's the, I certainly think that. Everybody I know on the left thinks that, but it's like, but then there's this like really weird performative contradiction, because like somehow, okay, so the like rapist who's been released from prison, that shouldn't be held against them, but like the Teen Vogue editor who tweeted dumb shit when she was 17, that should be held against her.
Yeah, fuck her, right? That's the mentality is kind of like, well, fuck her, but this guy there's more to it than that. Like, there's a situation, I want to say it's in New York, where a Filipino woman got either kicked or shoved, and a black man like kicked her in the head a bunch of times. And the first thing I heard people say, and this was on Democracy Now!, was that the security guards did nothing. And I'm like, first of all, and I will preface this by saying I respect the work Amy Goodman has done throughout her career. She has put literally her life on the line to get stories out to motherfuckers. That being said, I don't agree with everything Amy Goodman said.
No.
And I was like, well, I don't think people understand the difference between security guards and police. And as everybody's yelling out, defund the police, and we don't need officers, we need social workers, do the same work as police officers. That'll pretty much be police officers as social workers, and that's problematic in itself. You want to ask me for milk now? You thought this was a good time to ask for milk? Yeah?
We're not going to edit that out. We're going to keep that in. I like it.
You can go for it. That's real. This real shit just happened right now. But when I was at a homeless shelter, we had several security guards that were told you do not engage with anything you see. Your job is to observe and report. And there's quite a few security places like that. People don't want to take the risk of you getting hurt. They don't want to deal with a lawsuit. So to say, well, security did nothing, it's like, well, what did you want them to do?
Yeah, and right. So the security, like that was probably like that was probably what that person was told to do. Like when they got the job, is to do nothing.
Do nothing, and not just told like that's your ass.
Right.
If you do, and you know, someone called the police. It's not like they just sat there and watched the lady get her ass kicked and fucking applauded. You know.
But they were told they would be fired if they did anything except for what they did. And also, there's also like, so that's one thing. And then the other thing with that situation is, all right, let's say that they weren't like a, security guard working for a company where, they like that was like the policy and they knew that they would like really get in trouble if they went outside and tried to do something. Mm-hmm. Let's say that it was totally up to them, right, what they did or not. I mean, all of the sort of sitting behind a computer screen, being sure that if you were in that situation, that like definitely you would have instantly and bravely swung into action. I don't buy a lot.
And is that really what we look? Isn't that the first thing we say with these whole gun situations? Like when this motherfucker a few years ago shot up a goddamn Walmart in El Paso, and now this dude shot up the grocery store in Colorado. Isn't the first thing people? Well, if they would have just let people have guns inside, this wouldn't have happened. Do I really want somebody scared out of their fucking mind, half-cocked? I don't care if you're trained or not.
Ugh.
Taking a life is not something you can prepare yourself for.
Right.
I will say it one more time. Taking a life is not something you can prepare yourself for. So it's foolish to think that, I should have, you would have, maybe you would have stepped in, pushed the guy off. Maybe. But I've seen real deal ass whoopings. And I've seen people that, and then it gets into a whole other debate, especially when we talk about these programs where the government says, okay, we're going to buy a hotel. Well, who's going to run it? A nonprofit. Okay, well, who's going to do security? It doesn't matter to me. We threw the money out there. So third-party personnel everywhere. And who do you think these people are hiring? They're hiring people that they definitely can pay very little money to, and they can overwork. So in the case that I was working in, they were hiring guys from, I can't remember what country it was in Africa off the top of my head, but they were hiring these guys. Was it Senegal? Can't remember, but they all came from the same country, and these guys work sometimes 30 hours straight.
Yeah.
No overtime. No bumps for that. And you're seeing people get overworked, totally shit on, and have no power. Other than you can call the police and cross your fingers and hope they come. But generally in the situations that we were in, if you're seeing somebody get the fuck beat out of them, which happened from time to time, you call the police, the deed is done, man. The deed is done. And I'm not saying this to call for more police. I'm just painting a picture for people that's a little more nuanced than the simplicity of slogans.
Yeah. And it's also like, I mean, one of the problems that I have with, talking about abolishing the police, which is like a very satisfying thing to say, because it's like, yes, the, police, that's like a terrible institution. It's violent and racist and abusive, and there are like 1,000 things that are wrong with it. But like, and so it feels very satisfying. So I've got a solution, right? No more of that, right? Like, but is yeah, exactly. But then think, okay, but then like, who is going to be like what's the, like, you have to say what the alternative is. And like you said, you could say like, oh, we're gonna have social workers, but it's like, so the social workers like also going to be trained to like physically like contain people who are being violent,
de-escalate.
Start training social workers.
De-escalate. We don't need. Look, man.
Are the social workers going to be accompanied by somebody who's doing that? Because if so, either you're talking about police, or more likely what you really mean is private police. Like, and it seems like all the problems we just list off with the police, the one thing that would make that worse is making it not even a public organization. So it's like not even that there's some tiny indirect way in which it's like supposed to be accountable to the public. Now it's just accountable to whoever's hiring them. Like that's, and that gets you like the like the armies of Pinkertons from like the like any,
thank you,
like,
turn of the century during the labor movements. Yeah. Here's where I think a lot of people, it gets lost on people, is when you see these things happen. And recently on our Patron only part of our show, someone in the comments had mentioned they lived in Austin, and they were talking about the hotels in Austin. And I gave them kind of my opinion on the problems that happen with these hotels. And the first problem is you're literally taking the street and you're putting it in a hotel. And I got some bad news for motherfuckers. Just because people got their own room and a working bathroom and sometimes 3 meals a day does not make them think you're a great person, want to thank you, any of that shit. Any of that shit. I'm not saying these are shitty people. I'm just saying that it's foolish for people to think that I've solved society's problems by taking it and just throwing it in this room that I no longer have to see him anymore.
Yeah.
Me personally, I feel like that's why you're going to see more municipalities buy hotels, because there are so many motels that, ate a lot of shit during the pandemic in bad developing areas. And it's like, look, this part of town's run down anyway. There you go. Throw them over there.
Yeah.
Out of sight now. Out of fucking mind. And all the shit that went on outside in the street still goes on out here, especially when you don't have like wraparound services and you're not paying your staff adequately to deal with this stuff. And what happens is people get burnt the fuck out. Being a cop isn't the best job, but fuck, man, especially out here where I live in Oakland, some of these guys make a lot of fucking money, Ben, because there's so much overtime to be made in paperwork. Do you think social workers make overtime and fucking paperwork? Do you really want to look at somebody and say, are you the girl whose dad raped her or whose uncle sold her? I forget.
Right.
Do you want that to be normalized for people to deal with? Do you think there's a level of training that makes that level of trauma all fucking good?
Right.
And it's not like these bad behaviors just go away.
Yeah.
And depending on how you look at it, in the situations that we were in California, nobody wanted bad press on this. So a lot of things got suppressed. I saw a woman get the fuck knocked out of her. So that guy is gone. It was her boyfriend. They stayed in the same room. They were on a cocktail of drugs you can't imagine. And she wanted him to come back. They let him come back. I will say he never did it again. There were certain safeties that were set up on his end, actually, and on her end. But nobody wanted this shit. Nobody wanted the police to come.
Right.
You know, it's like, we don't want this to get out that this is not the wonderful solution that everybody wants it to be. It is part of a solution. Let's not get it twisted. Shelter is part of the solution, but the bigger part of the solution is probably how we view making people's material conditions get better.
Right.
And that's just kind of out of the scope for a lot of nonprofits. All right, I'm gonna stop.
No, that all unfortunately makes a lot of sense, and I think that, and yeah, I mean, saying like, oh, you have people who are trained to de-escalate like situations. It's like it's one of those things. It's very easy to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like, I mean,
I can I de-escalated crazy shit, but it came at a price.
Yeah.
And I had to walk away.
Yeah.
And it still hurts me to this day that I had to walk away from that, because there was good that we were doing within this building that I still get to see. Some people still have my number, and I get to get some good news every so often. Right. But the system in which it existed in was we had totally different ideals. Their ideal was, look, you're talking too much and you're fucking with all these things that we're here for, which for a lot of people was promotions within, possibly political aspirations. You're fucking with that.
Yeah. Because
you're looking at these material conditions for people. And that to me is like the fundamental problem with a lot of this stuff. And someone had asked, like, well, how do I get involved? And I was like, look, dude, they don't really check references for a lot of these jobs. You don't have to have a lot of experience.
Oh.
And if you really want to get involved, there's more of these hotel shelters, or just shelters in general, that just need help. They just need bodies to help people. Go down, get involved. It'll change your perspective.
Fair enough.
Sorry for being so depressing.
No,
on that note,
I don't.
I did not like the Load album.
What's that?
The post Black album of Metallica. I
didn't post Black album Metallica. Man, yeah. There's no good transition from that, but
fuck, it's late where you are, brother.
Yeah, it is late. But yeah, Black album itself, I actually like a lot. That's that's one of my that's a go-to thing. Like some of those.
Is it?
Like some of those. I don't know. How do you, because it's like I know like this sort of thing that would be very. I don't know. I feel like a lot of time people, play this game when they're talking about like favorite albums and stuff, where it's like it's like, oh no, I don't like the album that artist did that like
everyone likes
really, really good, and it sold like 20 billion copies and everybody loves it. It's like no. I like the one that's like this like recording that you can barely hear from like this early like club date, and like that's the that's the good stuff. Like that you have to pretend that like so it's like I don't know. I guess like it would be I have to admit, like the Justice for All stuff like that. It's like that doesn't do as much for me. Like I like that. But then again, maybe I'm just basic like that in general. That like I have this stuff.
I pass no judgment, brother. While I
I'll
was listening to all that death metal and shit, I was also bumping Cinderella. Like you get in the Bitter Lake tour van, sorry, not bus, tour van. Depending on who's driving, you will hear some cock rock. You will hear a good amount of cock rock. We were driving through Canada, and it was snowing in 2019. The last tour we were out, the other two guys were asleep in the back, and there's always supposed to be someone sitting in the passenger seat to keep the driver awake, which was my buddy Nick Young. Nick Young drinks far too much. Nick Young was passed out next to me, and I put on a Jamiroquai song. That motherfucker woke up from a stone cold sleep, and we were scream singing this song in the car, and then scream singing disco songs, fucking all the way to Montreal. So I pass no judgment on anybody for what they listen to. If the Black Album is your go-to shit, why would it not be? It sold an enormous amount of records for that band. It was their first time working with a producer in Bob Rock that took the turd and polished it, if you will, right? You can say the same thing about bands like Def Leppard. If you go back and listen to Def Leppard's early stuff, which I actually don't mind as much, but the pre-Mutt Lange stuff, Mutt Lange really polished that band to the point where Joe Elliott's singing style gets changed. And you can say the same thing about James Hetfield. And this stuff has changed in the way where these people are looking at them and going, you're going to burn this vocal cord out. And if you sing properly this way, you can sing a lot longer. Yeah. So if you're a fan of these bands, then you do have to enjoy the work that these producers did. My whole take on Metallica post that era, and I also actually, before my whole Facebook got deleted, I actually was interviewing guys that came up with them, and they were giving me kind of inside dope on what was going on in that time. And they were like, the Black Album is when things changed for those dudes, and they wouldn't hang out anymore. Yeah. Like they used to. And they're making music after kind of during the Black Album, and then after they're making music for the arena, and they're making anthems, which is something that they probably weren't used to. I love it. You probably, maybe you know, maybe you don't. You actually do know a lot of music. A band from Brazil called Sepultura. And they have an album called Roots, and the lead track off that album, the singer says, I made this for soccer stadiums. We're from Brazil. We play these big fucking stadiums. And I wanted to make an anthem that for every time I play it, I knew it would make the whole fucking, place jump. So definitely Roots is a lot heavier than the Black Album. But when you look at the stuff, Black Album, and after that, the sound is a lot different. I think the formula is still somewhat there of James and Lars, but maybe Kurt Hammett has a little more involvement. He's a little bit of a sloppier player than James, and this is coming from a very sloppy player. Kurt Hammett could play rings around me, and I'm not trying to shit on him like a lot of people do. But the Black Album for a lot of people, because it was so successful for Metallica, is the album that the quote unquote poser kids listen to. So the guy with the Dawkins shirt on maybe is bumping Enter Sandman. And now Metallica goes from the scrawny outsider kids with the denim vests to frosted tips and backwards sunglasses on the hat guys they're beating up the skinny guys in the denim vest. Like that music changed. And I think the Black Album for a lot of people is where their Metallica stopped being their Metallica, and it was the world's Metallica. And instead of going, oh, this is great because now all us little shitty bands can get heard, a lot of people just kind of wanted to take it and hold it. And didn't understand that maybe it's a way for more people to get out there, which to me ultimately it was.
Yeah, no, I mean, fair enough. Like I said, I mean, I tend to, I mean, I think that, Exile on Main Street is my favorite Stones album. We started out talking about Metallica, talking about Nirvana. I think probably, well, Nevermind, I guess, probably my favorite studio Nirvana album. And
The acoustic one.
I think that although I think that the by far the best Nirvana album is the live one at the very end, the MTV Unplugged. Although,
I was gonna say, the acoustic one. That was...
maybe that means I don't, maybe that means I don't actually like Nirvana that much, because a lot of my favorite stuff on there are the covers, the Meat Puppets covers, and the Lead Belly one at the very end.
I'm not a Nirvana fan.
Yeah.
It didn't really resonate with me during that era. I wanted something that sounded different, and I remember watching them debut on Headbangers Ball, and I was like, I don't get it. Man, it's not for me. Again, it is what it is. And I've gotten older, and I appreciate, like, I really hated a lot of grunge shit, and as I've gotten older and gotten to know certain people from that genre, like, I really like Alice in Chains. Like, that band does not really let me down. The harmonies, the tones, I really dig that. There's a lot of Soundgarden shit that I dig. It's actually early Soundgarden shit that I dig. A friend of mine actually toured with Chris Cornell, and was very, very hurt and shocked at his suicide, which I think is a bit of a loss. I got to see Chris Cornell with, what was it, Audio Slave?
Mm-hmm.
He did with pretty much Rage Against the Machine with Chris Cornell, and they did a cover of Seven Nation Army that blew me away, that I can't listen to the White Stripes Seven Nation Army, because listening to Tom
now I'm really curious. I got to listen to this, because I actually do really like that song, the White Stripes one. So
if you can find that Audio Slave cover, they were on Lollapalooza, and this is like 2003, and they closed it out with that, and I was like, man, Jack White can't play that song anymore, because it's Chris Cornell's and Tom Morello's tune now. And I think Jack White writes some badass rock and roll riffs. Say what you will about Jack White. I think some of his stuff, especially the early White Stripes stuff, I really, really dug it. But
yeah, no, I think so. I mean, like, I like, I mean, 7 Nation Army. I really like the White Stripes cover of St. James Infirmary Blues. I always liked that.
And he's from your hood, right?
Yeah. He's from Michigan. That's right.
Yeah. Gotta support your homies, man. MC5, Iggy and Stooges.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Kiss. No, Kiss isn't from there. Who else from there? Alice Cooper.
Yeah. Yeah, not so much lately, but we used to produce a lot of music. So.
Yeah, who's from Eminem?
Oh no, that is true. True.
Madonna. I don't know, man. Fucking Detroit Rock City is still a thing, man. Y'all shitting out some people. Who's from there now? Isn't there like a young somebody from there now? Everybody's got their head up the person's ass. I can't remember who it is.
Okay, I don't think this is somebody I know.
I used to feel like people had a sound from where you were from. There was a sound. There's a Bay Area metal sound. There's a West Coast punk sound. There's a New York hardcore sound. I don't really know what people sound like anymore. Cats look the same. You go to fucking Austin, Texas, and be like, oh, yeah, you sound like that guy. Fucking Phoenix. Yeah, that's cool for you.
I wonder, I mean, like, probably, I would imagine that probably over time that's gotten less and less true, that an area has its distinct sound, because I mean, I would just think that like it's so easy to find music from everywhere, now that like people are less likely to, come up listening mostly to local bands.
The only place I really see that is in hip hop, because I hear some kid a lot. I mean, the people that blow up kind of all sound the same, but from some of the stuff that I would hear from younger people that were local in the Bay Area, I was like, oh, this kind of sounds like Bay Area hip hop to me. Like, you're definitely from Oakland. Like, I hear it in the slang, I hear it in the words that you're using. Like, I was watching that show Insecure. I don't know if you watch it on HBO. See, Ben, I always fuck with you. Every time I mention a black show, you don't watch it. Where's your wife? Bring your wife out now, because we're gonna have a sit down. You need to watch more black shit.
Yeah,
but she says hella in the show, and this woman she's not just playing someone from LA. She's from LA, and I was like, whoa. When I was a kid and would go down to LA, like the first thing I ever recorded was with the Black Eyed Peas in like '97, and they were shit on like, oh, you guys are the Bay Area boys. Oh, the Bay Area boys are here because they say hella all the time. That was like our word, and now I see everybody using it, and I want to take it back.
Fair enough. Yeah, I got. Yeah, I remember. I think like fall 2019, staying with Michael Brooks and his girlfriend, longtime living girlfriend, who was Haitian, and we were and they. If you remember that show, Blackish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're. So I was like watching that with them, and like we watched like 3 or 4 episodes in a row, and I told them that like the first like 2, I was like, "What the hell am I watching? Like this isn't, this is not that great."
That's fair.
And then like we got to like 3 or 4, and I was like, I actually kind of like this now. I want to watch more, and I think Michael's line was, "Well, that's good, because I was going to have to call racism, if you just didn't like the show."
Don't what's funny? Like Pascal. For those that don't know, I host a show with a gentleman named Pascal Robert. He's of Haitian descent. He grew up in New York, and he's a curmudgeon-y old man. But he's very funny, and we talk daily. And he hates Kenya Barris, the guy that makes all the ish shows. And one day I mentioned Kenya Barris to him, and he just went off on how much he hates that dude.
Yeah, I could. I can imagine. I think I commented to you before after the first time Pascal was on this show that like it's like I've also interviewed Zizek, and like it's a little bit of the same thing, except that Pascal's better at staying on topic. But like I have but it's like the same kind of thing that you're not like, like both of these guys, like I'm not like having a conversation with them like I'm having a conversation with you right now. What you do when you interview them is you cue them up, and you just kind of sit back while they go off and do their thing
and move out of the way. Yes.
Yeah.
And you move out of the fucking way. No. I told that to Pascal, and he definitely smiled. He's like, what? This is a coy, like, what, me? Yeah, you chocolatey motherfucker. So we gotta find a way to get Zizek and Pascal on the same show, so they can just fucking talk at each other for like a good 45 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's I can imagine. I can imagine. I think that would be like, you'd have like, that'd be like one of the things. You'd have an interviewer, but they'd ask like one question at the beginning, and then like maybe they'd like get one in again at like the hour mark, and then like that would be that would
I would seriously, I think if you just left a like, I'm gonna just leave this here, like you could leave a topic in front of those two cats, and they would just, and you put a camera in the room and let them go off on it. That's actually kind of something that I'm hoping happens. I mentioned it to Doug Lane that I definitely want to do that. Because I do want to see Pascal talk to someone like that, because I enjoy having my co-host. I actually want him to get bigger. I get the biggest kick when I find out he's going on someone's show. Like when you were like, oh, Pascal's coming on, or actually he told me he's like, I'm going on Ben. But I was like, what? Yeah, I was like, fuck you. Like, I want people to know who you are and what you do, because he's also one of those guys, and I can't get deep like this into like the Frankfurt School with. You can get deep into theory with him. And I just love the way his mind works, man. I learned so much from that cat. So
fair enough. Well, got to have him back on soon. And so glad that that you came by tonight. It was a very last minute thing, but it's a but
I hope it worked out. I hope the patrons enjoyed it.
I'm sure they did. All right. Thanks, Jason.
And thank you, Ben.